Hello there, and welcome back to another video, Astro Bros subscribers. So, today we are going to be continuing the Lunar Mansion series, and we're going to be describing what happens when you have planets in the final Lunar Mansion in Gemini constellation, which goes from 20 degrees Gemini to 3.2 degrees Cancer. And this lunar mansion or nakshatra is called Punarvasu, or the seventh lunar mansion in Western hermetic astrology. It's the Punarvasu nakshatra in Vedic astrology. And the co-ruler of it is Jupiter. And for anybody who didn't see the previous videos or doesn't know what a nakshatra is, basically it's the path that the moon moves in one day. So each 24-hour revolution of the Earth, when the sun goes up over our heads and goes around, the moon moves basically 13 1/3 degrees in that time, and each of these transits or whatever of the moon are called lunar mansions or nakshatras in Vedic astrology. So the previous lunar mansion in the sign of Gemini, which extended from 6.4 degrees Gemini to 20, was called Aradra. And this lunar mansion was co-ruled by the north node of the moon, and it was a very chaotic energy that represented storms, destruction of your security, and then the need to use communication to bring that security back into your life. So, this lunar mansion that we're discussing today, the seventh one, is co-ruled by Jupiter, and this is going to be a theme at the end of air signs. The lunar mansion at the end of air signs is always going to be ruled by Jupiter, and it's going to represent a teacher. So keep in mind, if you have seen any of my Sagittarius or Pisces ascendant videos, I will say repeatedly that Jupiter represents the teachers in your life, the professors, the instructors. It doesn't have to be at a university setting or a school setting. It could be just somebody you meet, like a martial arts instructor. It could be somebody any authority, male older authority figure who has an information transmission to you, like they're in your life to teach you something, is represented by Jupiter. So Gandalf is a representation of Jupiter in The Lord of the Rings. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a representation of Jupiter in Star Wars. It's the archetype of the wise old man, the wise old king, basically. So Rafiki in the Lion King, the baboon in the Lion King, is a representation of Jupiter as well. So just any intelligent, intellectual, higher self figure, the one who knows everything, who all the other characters turn to if there's ever a puzzle, if they need to know some old bit of information, that kind of thing. So with the air signs always representing ideas, intelligence, teamwork, communication, and your goals, because people communicate with each other to move towards their goals, the end of the air sign is actually a very, very favorable position, whether that's Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, because it represents a person who's been through the chaos of the earlier parts of the air sign, through the Mars portion of it, where they're basically fighting with their ideas and fighting to learn to communicate. And then through the North Node part, which is almost exclusively deals with chaos and confusion of ideas. And then this lunar mansion at the end of air signs represents the ability to step back from that chaos, look back at the storm, and try to help pull people out. So these people are your teachers. You could see podcasters from here. You could see intellectuals, occasionally university professors, but not always. Typically, these people are the people in the modern day who are going to be authors, social media personalities. They're going to utilize technology, because air signs always represent information and technology. Whereas seeking the status of an intellectual is not necessarily something that these people are going to want to do. because that's more of a fire sign thing, because fire represents your personality, your sense of self, your status in the world. Air signs are not really super interested in that. They're not very egotistical energies. What they really want to do is share information that's useful, regardless of if they get the degree, if they get recognized for it. These are the people like your Elon Musk, your Bill Gates, who never actually went to school, yet they know more than people who went to school just for the degree, not to learn. So it represents kind of a magician archetype. Whereas the earlier air parts of the air sign represent somebody striving for material success or striving for security or to just calm the chaos in their own mind and their own communication style. The end of air signs represents, like from 20 degrees on, it represents a person who is like interested in teaching. They've overcome their own chaos in the past life, or they were born without that sense of chaos. They were born with a sense of understanding of how the world is. And these people can often, potentially, depending on the planet here, they can come across as arrogant, but they're not. It's just that, like, if you were around people who you thought were like children and you see them making the same mistakes over and over again, you wouldn't necessarily be arrogant. You would just be frustrated because you see these people making the same stupid mistakes that you feel like you've already made, so you don't need to make them. And that's kind of what these ends of the air sign Jupiter nakshatras represent. They represent people who are like the wizard archetype. Like in The Lord of the Rings, when you've got like Merry and Pippin and Sam and Boromir and all these people running around like fighting in their own group, like they're on the same team, they have the same goal, but they're fighting inside their group, and they're getting in each other's way and stepping on each other's toes, trying to like beat their chest and get to the position of authority. And Gandalf always has to look at them and just be like, no, y'all chill. We have one goal. We have one ultimate goal, which is to defeat evil, and we don't have time to like for y'all to just like fight with each other, because we're never going to get to the end. And that's kind of this air sign's function, is to be sort of not necessarily a leader, because Gandalf doesn't actually lead the group in The Lord of the Rings. That's Aragorn. And that would represent like your fire signs. Like the actual king would be represented by a fire sign, the person of authority and status. These people are kind of on the periphery of the group usually, and they know typically when to keep to themselves and when to poke their heads in and like correct the course of the group when it goes astray. So these people prefer not to lead, and they prefer to observe from the outside of the group, and they'd come in at the last minute. And these signs can also they represent the air signs' innate ability to use their intelligence to gain independence. I think it was Nietzsche who said that to live alone, one must be an animal or a god. Well, the beginning of the air sign would represent the animal side of that statement, and then the end of the air sign would represent the God side of that statement, in that these people's intelligence allows them to sort of live in isolation should they choose to. Like, these are the people that you might see living off-grid with solar panels, with, working from their computer, and COVID hits, and they already knew about COVID before it hit. They understand, and everybody comes to them for advice. In a tribal society, these might be your shamans, your magicians. In the Middle Ages, these people would probably have been alchemists. It's just a position of people who are not necessarily interested in the authority that comes with the intelligence, but they're interested in just the intelligence and being useful. So in general, this is a very favorable position, especially to have your moon in. Less so for the sun, but that's just because the sun wants the authority, and this position is not. They're very intelligent. People end up respecting them, but they don't necessarily want the authority. Like, their primary goal of these people is to achieve knowledge so that they can be useful. But if people aren't going to listen to their knowledge, they're not going to bend their back over for them. They're just going to leave and give their knowledge where it's more needed. So that's basically what this nakshatra represents. Now, the combined energies of Mercury and Jupiter, they create the composite energy of the North Node. So that might be confusing to some people because the North Node is a chaotic energy that is very short-sighted, and this position is not short-sighted at all. But this is like the higher self of the North Node, in that the North Node by itself is very chaotic. But for instance, if you put the North Node together with Jupiter, like if North Node and Jupiter are conjunct in your chart, it gets a person who rejects the authority of the institutions of their society and becomes like a walking university. So instead of Jupiter going to the university and the North Node committing fraud and gathering resources quickly, immorally, however it does, when you put these two together in the same sign or house, you get a person who's like a walking college, like a person who uses all the information that is in the world, whether or not it's taught in their society, to achieve their goals. And these people are often very moral. So North Node does not always have to be an immoral energy. It depends on where it's placed, what house it's placed in, what sign. Typically, yes, if it's standalone by itself, it is an immoral energy. However, in the right circumstance, it can become sort of like a David Blaine type, like a person who's very intelligent, very spiritual, very mystical, and nobody can really put their finger on exactly how they're doing what they're doing. They just know it works. But the flip side of that is these people do tend to be, especially the Punarvasu nakshatra people, they do have sort of a gluttonous side because North Node represents gluttony and constant consumption and dissatisfaction. But in general, these people's gluttony is more for ideas. Like they are never satisfied with the information they have, which can be looked at as an admirable thing. It just it can create a disconnect between them and other people when they realize that this hunger for new ideas is not necessarily with everybody else. So the isolation, though, the intellectual isolation, is a good problem to have. It's better than having all the other problems that people tend to have. So this this nakshatra is a very good one, by and large, to have most planets in. So yeah, that was my video on Punarvasu nakshatra, and the next video we're going to be making is the 8th lunar mansion Pusha, which is in the sign of Cancer exclusively. So check that video out when it drops, and I will see you next time.